Hello, everyone, and welcome. Just taking care of some final housekeeping things here. It is 11:30. I think that we're probably going to have some people jumping in as we go here, but we're going to get started. We want to be respectful of your time today. We've got a lot to share with you. First off, hello and welcome. I'm Chris Baldwin. I'm the founder and chief visionary officer of True Digital Communications, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Session today that we're going to be talking about over the next 60 minutes is about challenger brands. These are the bold, scrappy, and strategic companies that don't have the biggest budgets, but often make the biggest impact. Whether you're a marketer, business leader, or just curious about how a smaller brand can outsmart the giants, you've come to the right place today. At True, we believe that business is personal, and that belief aligns perfectly with the challenger mindset. Get closer to your customer, tell a better story, and dare to be different. We're going to look at how challengers take on the market leaders, not by outspending them, but by being more relevant, more nimble, and more human. So grab a coffee, silence your email if you can, and let's dive in. So for me, I first learned about challenger brands years ago at an agency I worked at when a consultant told me, wow, you guys are great at challenger brand marketing. I was surprised. I asked him, what is a challenger brand? I wasn't familiar with it. And he explained to me how challenger brands market differently than market leaders. I recall at the time, and yes, I'm about to show my age, the example he gave was Hertz Rent-A-Cars. They were the brand leader in the car rental market. And Avis and their We Try Harder Challenger campaign and why it was so successful for them. It opened my eyes to the differences. Now, I've worked for both market leaders and challenger brands over the past 30 years. And now as I reflect on it all, our best work, my best work, has always been with the challenger brand. So joining me in this appreciation for challenger brands are my two amazing team members, Tony Finizzi and Wayne Slossi. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Tony Finizzi, the content lead at True Digital for the past 8 years and working in agencies for 25 years, working with both challenger brands and several leader brands on messaging, strategy, and brand development. And this is definitely one of my most favorite topics to discuss.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I am Wayne Slossi, digital marketing lead at True Digital Communications. I've been in the industry for over 15 years now. In that time, I've helped many challenger brands gain market share and reshape their industry. Today, I'm excited to share many of these tactics and strategies that I've used over the years with Chris and Tony here.
Great. So at True, we built our agency around challenger brands. We don't just understand them, we live the mindset, and we're genuinely very excited to talk about something we care deeply about with you. So let's get started. But one of the biggest traps we see, especially with emerging brands, is what I call the market leader myth. And it's this belief that if you want to be number one, well, you have to act like you're number one. So that means copying their ads, their tone, their media strategy, because, hey, if it worked for them, it's going to work for me, right? But here's the truth. What worked for the leader then won't necessarily work for the challenger now. Market leaders have scale, they have legacy, they have momentum. Challenger brands have to build from a different foundation, and that is the key. Trying to mimic the leader usually leads to playing it safe. When you play it safe, you become invisible. Challenger brands succeed by doing things the opposite, by being bold, by being personal, by showing up differently. That can be with their media or their creative. Your unfair advantage is not being the leader. That gives you the freedom to rewrite the rules and not follow someone else's playbook. So challenger brands have to think smarter, they have to move faster, and they need to take bolder swings. And that's where our team thrives. We love helping brands punch above their weight, tell their story in ways that stick, and win loyalty without relying on massive budgets. So today we're going to show you how challengers outmaneuver the market leaders and why now is the best time to embrace this identity. So let's get to it. We're going to have a couple polls here as we go through, and I should also mention there are, if you have questions as we're going through, there is a Q&A at the very top here. Go ahead and put your questions in there. At the very end, we're going to hit on these. We're going to hit you with some polls. First one started here, and then there's also a chat function if you just wanted to comment there as well. So let's get started with our first poll today. Is your brand a challenger brand, a market leader, or you don't know? You can go ahead and hit the appropriate answer. Better sense of who we're talking to today. Wait, and they're all coming in. And from what I'm seeing, we are all about the challenger brand, which is fantastic. Often was laughing, thinking, if we have a market leader in here, we're going to give them the competitive playbook here, but that's okay. So we'll go from there. But thank you. We'll have a couple more polls as we're going here. But let's get started. So with our agenda today, before we dive in, here's a quick look at what we're covering today. We're going to start by laying the foundation, what it really means to be a market leader and the traditional approach that they take to marketing. Then we're going to shift our focus, stars of today's conversation, the challenger brands. And then we're going to define what makes a challenger brand different, not just in size, but really in mindset. From there, we'll explore the challenger brand's approach to marketing, how they outsmart rather than outspend. We'll look at key opportunities challenger brands can lean into, especially in today's crowded and chaotic marketplace. And finally, we'll wrap up with a practical discussion around challenger brand positioning, how to own your voice, how to stand out, and how to build loyal followers. So whether you're already a challenger or you're thinking about leaning into that identity, today's session is really built to inspire and to prepare you. So let's get started. So what exactly is a market leader? It's a brand that owns a dominant share in the marketplace. No kidding, Chris, I could have guessed that. This is the name everyone knows. They have the biggest budgets, they have the broadest distribution, and usually they have the loudest voice. But here's the key. Market leaders don't market to grow. They market to protect. Their strategies are built around retention, not disruption. You'll see massive media buys. You'll see global awareness campaigns. You'll see very rigid playbooks that leave really little room for agility. Their power comes from their momentum, but momentum can also make them slow to adapt, slow to personalize, and slow to actually take risks. And when it comes to working with dealers, distributors, anything in two-step distribution, with reps, it's often a you adapt to us kind of relationship. These are the traits that a challenger brand can absolutely exploit because agility, creativity, bold storytelling are not usually found in a corporate playbook. Tony, I'd like to share a little bit more about what we're talking about.
Sure. So we'll look at a couple examples of challenger brands versus leader brands and a little bit surprising on what some of these, which ones are which. One of the brands we look at first here is Milwaukee. It's a very premium brand. It has a ferocious pro following. People love it. It isn't even in the top 5 of market share for power tools among pros. The market leaders are held by, the market leader is Stanley Black & Decker. The top 4 challenger brands in front of Milwaukee are Bosch, Hilti, Makita, Hitachi. So although Milwaukee is lower on the market share even on the challenger brand list, it's widely accepted as one of the best power tool brands based on pro preference, quality, innovation, durability. And Milwaukee has, to this day, just because they have such a loyal following, become a status symbol among pros. It's an excellent power tool, even if it isn't the market leader. Looking into the automotive category, this is always a cool one. If the Toyota RAV4 just surpassed the Ford F-150 as the most popular vehicle in the United States. That makes every other truck and car model a challenger brand. But there are a couple other brands that stand out for their innovation and technology, particularly Rivian and Tesla. These two vehicles, they have a strong following. They're definitely showcasing the latest technology. And that's made a Tesla among one of the first vehicles to really grow in the electric market. So they can be very popular in one category, but overall, they're still a challenger brand. But Tesla right now, they're surpassing Polestar, Faraday, and Fisker with 45% market share. Rivian's 5%. The others are even just less than 1%. So definitely a challenger brand, but definitely a household name too. Tesla and Rivian, whether you like them or not, are great examples of challenger brands. And then that Ford F-150 and RAV4, those are your slow and steady category leaders, and they're going to stay that way for a while. But they run the risk of losing some market share to these challengers that do come into the categories and can steal some overall market share.
So we're going to ask you real quick at this point, if you could drop into chat who you think the industry market leader is in your category. That'll just help us to know who you're up against. Wayne, tell us more.
So as we look at the market leader approach, we're going to look at Dasani as kind of an example of that. So when market leaders approach the market, they're in a defensive position, much like what Chris alluded to. And market leaders, they will win through scale, through consistency, and overall broad reach. That leadership, though, does come with some trade-offs, and I know we're going to dive a lot into that today. And they're not as agile as a challenger brand is, which is one of the benefits of being a challenger brand, which we'll talk more about here in a second. How do market leaders defend their position? They look at large scale media buys. They're looking at things like TV, paid social, big sponsorships. They invest heavily in those channels. And the reason they do that is for overall visibility. They're casting a really wide net and a really broad message. They also look to do that through targeting national and global awareness campaigns. For the same reason, they want that recognition. They want people to understand who they are in the market and defend that position at the top. Unfortunately, being a market leader sometimes does come with downfalls, such as a rigid marketing approach. Usually they're very structured, they have a top-down strategy, and they really prioritize control and consistency over being agile and nimble and being able to adapt to what the market does and changes over time. So that is definitely a disadvantage to them. They are able to really leverage their vendor-driven relationships. They obviously are a very large company most of the time, and they're able to leverage their partnerships through different efficiencies or standardization or through co-marketing or just being able to access that network really becomes an advantage for them, and they tap into that day in and day out. Market leaders are sales driven by momentum. They're not agile, as I'd mentioned. They're powered by essentially building up on top of their sales. They typically have to answer to shareholders. Are they turning a profit at the end of the day? And that influences their decision on how they're going to go to market and what they're going to do. Where challenger brands oftentimes don't have that limitation in the same sense. And I also wanted to touch here that, Dasani is definitely a market leader of this. They're able to be able to lead the market. They're the leader in the bottled water markets. They're owned by Coca-Cola, obviously, but they're able to stay at top by utilizing a lot of these tactics in order to keep that standing.
Well, as Wayne mentioned, there's a lot of risk about being a market leader, especially when it shows itself in slow decision making and lack of agility. The F-150 has been the best-selling vehicle in the United States for 43 years, up until 2024, as we just mentioned with the RAV4. So what are they doing to stay at the top? Not a whole lot. It's a lot of, there's a formula. It's been working for them. So nothing has changed in the past 15 years. F-150s look largely the same from over a decade ago. So there's a lot of slow decision making. There's less innovating. And that opened the door for challenger brands like GM and Ram. And they come along and introduce new innovations like a multifunctioning tailgates, clever storage solutions for tools, new technology in the vehicles. And that really helps them take away some of that market share. It helps them grow because they have opportunity to grow. They're not trying to run by a script and defend their leader position. They're able to take some risks and see how that goes. So F-150 slow decision making, that's eventually catching up with them. And that's going to slowly eat away from their market share.
So what exactly is a challenger brand? Got a couple different brands here: Red Bull, Airbnb, Patagonia, all of them challenger brands in the categories that they're at. So it's not just about being the number 2 or 3 in the market. It's about having the number 1 mindset that refuses to play by the old rules, as the good folks at Ford are doing with the F-150. Challenger brands are built on visionary thinking. They don't just react to the market, they reshape it. Think about how Red Bull and their positioning with "it's got wings." They move with agility, not bureaucracy. They're fast, they're responsive, and they're willing to take risks and bold swings where others are going to hesitate. They obsess over the customer, not just selling to them, but building around their needs, their frustrations, their values. That's a customer-centric mentality in action. Think about that with Airbnb. Again, they're competing with Hilton, Marriott, any other major hotel chain, but they have something different, and it's a different approach. They saw where the weaknesses were. They use creative storytelling to punch above their weight. They turn brand truths into emotional connections. And perhaps most importantly, challengers make a smart use of their resources. They don't have bloated budgets. So every dollar, every tactic, every partnership, it has to work harder. It's this combination of strategy, spirit, scrappiness that makes challenger brands not just viable, but incredibly powerful. So this leads us to our next poll. What challenger brand traits best describe your brand? Tell us, please.
Drop in the chat.
There it is. Curious to see what comes up here. Bold and forward thinking, customer obsessed, agility, innovation, always thinking outside the box, all the above. We, of course, have to give that answer, right? Interesting. None of us are smart or resourceful, but that's okay. That's what your agency is all about. So, any case, this is helpful to see that the customer obsessed is really the top there. Actually, knowing many of you who are on the call today, I'm not surprised by that. But again, the challenger brand, it's a different way of thinking. And this really is the DNA behind it all. So, Mr. Tony. I'm sorry, Wayne.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So much unlike we looked at the marketer leader approach, we're going to look at the challenger brand approach. Challenger brands typically will take a digital first, audience focused approach to advertising, much in, not in comparison to what the market leader does. They're able to compete through precision, through their creativity, being through meaningful engagement, and being able to really break through the noise that the market leaders have created in the market. They're able to use precision targeting. They don't do mass media buys. They look to be smarter about how they use their money that they do have, because they don't have a ton of money on hand. Rather than casting that wide net, they use data to reach specific high value audiences. They're more efficient and they're more targeted with their spend. And they use the channels that are really going to work and reach their audiences in a very creative and innovative way. They also look to develop bold and different messaging. They cut through that noise with really just messaging that talks specifically to their audience. What are the audience's pain points? What keeps them up at night? How do you talk directly to them rather than casting that really big net and that broad messaging that a market leader does? Challenger brands really excel at engaging with their audience at a one-to-one type of scenario. They always look to use digital first campaigns, and they're looking to use interactive formats. Can they tap in with influencers? Can they use platforms that are up and coming technology? I'd be amiss if I didn't mention AI here. How do you leverage technology like AI in order to outrank your competition or beat the market leader? They also look to develop partnerships, and these are different than how market leaders approach their partnerships. This is more on a networking type of scenario. How do I co-market with similar brands? How do I tap that market and where the audience is actually located and looking to find answers? How do I cut through that noise by being able to take a more one-on-one or a few to many type of approach? Mm-hmm. And lastly, I think challenger brands are really, really great at storytelling. They're able to educate their market and they add value through that. It's not just, hey, look at us, we're the market leader. We're going to give you value through our interactions together, through the buying cycle, and be able to educate you and tell you the story that's looking to solve your answers. That's the value that we can provide to our audience that a lot of the time market leaders just don't think about as a part of their strategy. So storytelling is one of the best tools in a challenger brand's tool set to be able to use.
Thank you. So I think this is an interesting one. Chris mentioned this a little bit before, the risk of copycat marketing. It's important for challenger brands to stay out of this trap. There's two brands that have been battling for number one position for many, many years. And even from their beginning, each brand, Samsung and Apple, have had their own unique story. They created two very unique audience segments. They had strong followings and they were very relevant to those audiences. But as that market matured, the brands started competing on which products feature the best chips, the best cameras, the best use of AI, the best user experience. It started becoming a me too. Who has the latest tech? Who has the best use? So apart from the legacy users who definitely have their following, whether you're going to be a Apple person or a Samsung person, that leadership position is traded back and forth. And today, Apple's recently surpassed Samsung in the US market share, and Samsung holds number one in global market share. But that title for number one is still very open to who's going to connect to their audience the best. It's not a matter of who's going to copycat the other person, but how are they going to create the best audience? So I love that from the poll when everyone said audience obsessed. This is very much the case. Build your foundation, be relevant to your audience, let them be the advocates for your products, and that's going to help serve the challenger brand so much better.
So next with this is really what I think is at the core of the challenger brand mantra. Outsmarting beats outspending. So much of the market leader is throwing money at a problem or throwing money at an opportunity. For the challenger brand, we don't have that luxury. So we've got to be smarter with how we do that. So every challenger brand has its own story, its own way of creating relevance and connection with an audience. And that's the key. Challengers don't win by copying the leaders. They win by leaning into who they are, what their audience really cares about. Got a couple examples here that we're going to share from several categories. So we're going to start off with Milwaukee Tools, since I know that's probably Tony's favorite. Instead of just putting on a new battery on a saw, they reinvented the category with a powerful electric saw that solved a real pain point for pros. No noise, no fumes, no gas. That's innovation with purpose. It's not innovation to come out with just something because everybody else has it. Or look at Pepsi. They did a program specifically with Domino's Pizza. They didn't waste time comparing themselves to Coke, which is often the trap. Instead, they found an emotional truth. Pizza just tastes better with a Pepsi. So simple, relatable, smart. And then there's Patagonia, which is, I think, a shining star here. They're not trying to shout the loudest about waterproof technology or how it can be 100 degrees below zero and you're not going to freeze. Instead, they're showing what it means to be human. They're encouraging their customers to repair their gear or pass it on to somebody else that can use it before buying something new. That's relevance through their values. Finally, and this is an exciting area in building products right now, Thermery. They're bringing back natural wood siding back into the spotlight, something I didn't think I'd ever see again, since we're in an area now that's dominated by fiber cement and vinyl products. So they're not doing this by nostalgia, though. They're coming back with thermal modification. They're making it durable. They're making it stable. And it's now a real contender against fiber cement. It's a perfect example of a challenger brand's nimbleness and innovation actually in action and working. So each of these brands isn't chasing a leader. Yes, they knew who the market leader is that they are competing with, but they're charting their own path. They're creating their own dialogue around their brand. And that really is the challenger brand spirit. So challenger brand opportunities. We talk about being bolder. I think one of the things that is often overlooked, or honestly is a great thought starter, especially when you're trying to sell this through about why this campaign over that campaign, is there's certain things that a challenger brand can say that the market leader simply can't. Going back to the Avis Hertz example I gave, Avis, we try harder. If I'm Hertz, I can't say that. I'm the market leader. How much harder do I have to go here? So a couple thought starters here just to give you some ideas about how perhaps to think about this. So, quote, we're the underdog. A market leader, they can't play the underdog card. It's not authentic. But challengers, we are the underdog. And that story builds a connection. How many people out there feel that they are the underdog? It's a common theme. Break the system. Leaders are the system. If they say this, it rings hollow. But challengers, why do we exist? We exist to disrupt the status quo. It's an opportunity. Just like Patagonia here, you don't need to buy new. What a statement. Market leader can't afford to tell people not to buy. But when a challenger says this, it becomes a powerful, varying statement that really hits on their values. I love this next one. We're not for everyone. Leaders need mass appeal. One size fits all. Challengers win by knowing exactly who they're for, and they lean into that. Heard this one before. We're not the biggest, and we like it that way. For a market leader to say that, it would be completely disingenuous. For a challenger, though, it's a celebration of their speed, their creativity, and more importantly, their freedom. Our product isn't perfect yet. Leaders shy away from vulnerability. Challengers, they earn trust by being real, by being transparent, and committing to getting it better. We're changing everything. Market leaders can't change everything. Their entire foundation is built on not changing. They're bound by their systems. But a challenger brand, they can move, they can adapt, they can evolve in ways that a leader just simply can't. So, final one. We say what others won't, and this really is it right there. Leaders, they fear backlash. Challengers, we earn fans by being bold, by being unfiltered, and honestly, unapologetic. Love this campaign that we're showing here by DHL. Obviously, they compete with FedEx and UPS, both leaders in many ways, but, fed up with them? Let's talk to DHL. So, right now, it's been quite a year, hasn't it? I think the only thing that is certain in our current market condition is uncertainty at this point. And honestly, one of the things that we're seeing with a lot of the brands that we work with is it's really never been better to be a challenger, or at least to think like a challenger. In today's markets, we're all talking about tight budgets. There's a lot of uncertainty, and buying decisions are slow. And challenger brands are really built for moments just like this. Why do I say that? Well, first, challengers get closer to customers. When market leaders focus on reach, challengers build on relationships. And in times like these, relationships are always going to win. Second, they're more relevant. Challenger is listening, they're adapting, they're speaking directly to what their customer is actually caring about and doing that right now. Third, your advocates already want your product. They believe in what you're doing. And when marketing dollars shrink, it's that word of mouth. It's those avid fans of your brand. They're the ones that become your most powerful media channel. You need to harness that. And finally, challengers simply can pivot faster. I think we're all looking for some breaks in this market. We're looking for some shining lights that are going to get us through this storm. Part of being a challenger brand is seeing that, identifying it, and helping your customers get to that point. Simply put, challenger brand doesn't need 6 layers of approvals or 8 months of planning cycle. They can move with the market, and then they can adjust in real time. So in a challenging economy, being nimble, being human, being direct, it isn't just a strategy, it's actually a survival skill, and challenger brands are simply built for it.
Excellent. So next, we're going to look a little bit into how challenger brands are positioned against market leaders. Have a bunch of different examples here, and we're going to look at the differences between high-cost products and low-cost, and then whether they're viewed as premium or commodity. I think this is a good exercise because when you can really embrace your position as a challenger brand, it gives you an advantage because then you can build all your messaging, you can build your brand story, you can build your personality, your archetype from this, and it just starts to really pull together. For example, if we just hit back to our original example of Dasani, which has been more of a low-cost commodity bottled water brand, definitely a market leader, but how would you introduce a new type of bottled water? Well, then you look over here at Liquid Death. They bring in clever marketing, cool package designs. Their distribution network is vastly different than Dasani. Instead of being on the end caps of your grocery stores, it's concerts and clubs and outdoor events, and it becomes has more of a cult following for the brand. That's a way for them to grow. If it was just another bottled water, it would barely make a dent. nobody would buy it. It wouldn't have a chance at being competitive. The other ones we can look at, you can look at Jack Daniels. Again, it's very popular. It's widely available. Definitely a leader. It's I would say it's slightly more on the commodity side because everybody has Jack Daniels. But if you want to compete, Blanton's. It's rare. It's only for certain people. It's hard to find. It's that we're not like everybody else, so they have an advantage. That Patagonia example was another one. They're about 40% more than anything that's costs about 40% more than North Face, which is the leader brand. So how can they compete? It's fine that they cost more. People who use it believe in their systems, and they will support that company before they support a big corporation. To look at Lens Crafters and Warby Parker. Lens Crafter is a dominant market leader, brick and mortar, has stores. But how did Warby Parker introduce themselves? They went digital first. They became a way for people to get affordable glasses, stylish designs, and made it easy to do it online. And that was a different way to approach the same problem that Lens Crafter was currently delivering. And I think one of my favorites here too, if you think of Macs, which most of us probably are if you're in the advertising industry here,
All
you're
of us.
mostly on a Mac. Their position is, the creative choice for professionals. Um, Apple, even though it's a very high cost and people value it and they have a close following and it's more on the premium side, it is a distant challenger to Lenovo, which is the number one PC brand for professionals. So just because many, I mean, much less of us have heard of Lenovo. We've all heard of Mac. So kind of a cool example of how when you really connect with your audiences and you nurture those relationships, it can position you with higher value. Even if you don't have that market share, you're going to have a loyal following, and that gives you the opportunity to grow. Where Lenovo is definitely going to be just preserving their position. I saw chat pop up. Very cool. Then we'll revisit that. And then we'll dive into a little bit of the brand archetypes that each of these brands have.
Real quick before we get into that, Tony.
Yeah.
We're seeing lots of questions. This is great. We are going to spend some time at the end asking those questions. If you look at the very top there, instead of putting your questions in chat, if you can put them in the Q&A column, that way everybody can see the questions that are asked, and we can then pull them all together from there. So sorry, Tony, keep going.
Excellent. So when we talked about challenger brands and their positioning, we also want to talk about what their brand messaging looks like. And that follows, if people are familiar with brand strategy and brand development, archetypes are just one method to develop your brand story. And the archetype is the personality that your brand represents. That personality, if it was a person, how does it relate to your customers? There's about 60 or so archetypes in total. Pioneer, innovator, guardian, shaman, you can go through a whole list. There's tons of them. A few of them really resonate well with the challenger brands, and that's real and human is the first one. Real and human is a way to differentiate yourself from the facelessness of a leader brand. A leader brand's not going to have that personal connection because they're seen as a leader, a little bit more self-focused and not necessarily looking out for their customers. Dramatic disruptor, offering a product that is significantly different to the leader. They found a new way to do things, a better way, and they can leverage that disruption that they have in the industry. Irreverent maverick is using wit and humor to challenge complacency in the leader brands. Be different, be clever, do things that the leaders can't do because they have to play it safe. They have to appease everybody. They're going to be a little more bland, a little more homogenized. And then missionary, changing something in the world that's not fair. That goes back to being human, relating back to your people, being customer obsessed. That's very important. We're going to drop another poll here. Which challenger brand archetype aligns with your brand? Is there one that favors a little bit more closely to your brand? And then as that's filling out, we'll have a couple examples here. If you look at real and human, one of the examples would be Subaru. Subaru has been a brand that's definitely focused on humans. It's the car that you want to choose for your, to protect your family. It's for generations. It's human in the respect that it cares for what you care about, and that's nature and providing that safety and security. Dramatic disruptor. This is a really cool one. American ground screw. This is a building product that was introduced in the past couple of years to help to really disrupt the industry on how to lay the foundation for a deck or a shed or an outdoor structure. You put a 5-foot screw into the ground and it becomes your base. It's a foundation. It's a completely different solution for a foundation that's really getting a lot of attention. Reverent Maverick, how do you be different, clever, a little bit risky? Liquid Death was another good one. That's how they competed against a commodity product. They became specialty because they had a different view on things. And then back to Patagonia, they're the missionary. They're the human cause. They're there to help you make a difference, and they want to be there right along with you, and people will be loyal to that. So very, very cool way to connect with your audiences.
Tony, overwhelmingly, Real and Human seemed to be at the top of the list. A Relevant Maverick was second, and then a lot of not sure yet, and that's fine. I will mention something. The archetypes. This is something that Tony and his team believe in strongly. Getting a sense for the feel of your brand, the tone of your brand, really the core of it. I think the architect model works really, really well. So moving on here. True. You know, we build up challenger brands. Again, it's something, as I mentioned, has been very core to who we are. I hope we've sold you on really the benefits of being a challenger brand, since we're all working for challenger brand companies. But at True, we work with challenger brands because we think like one every day. True is very much built to be a challenger brand. We believe in smart, targeted marketing, no bloat, no waste. Everything we do is intentional, built to move the needle. We create bold, memorable campaigns that help brands stand out in crowded markets. Our content isn't just made to be clever. It's made to be strategic. And because Wayne's here, I'll say SEO is in there as well. So it's designed to build loyalty across the channel, from distributors to reps to contractors and everyone in between. And when it comes to service, we're nimble, we're personal, we listen. We do this by design. We move fast, we collaborate closely, and we care deeply because business is really personal for us. We're not a big agency trying to act small. We're a challenger, just like you, and we're that by choice. And that's exactly how we help our clients win. So, little wrap up on today before we get into the questions. I love this campaign by Chick-fil-A. How can you not love cows misspelling words? So I hope that we've sold you on being a challenger brand and the advantages of it. Excuse me, let me catch up here on my slides. So in closing, here's what I'd like you to remember. First of all, think smarter. Don't try to outspend the market leader. It's not going to work. You need to outthink them. Be nimble. Use your size to your advantage. Move faster. Adapt quickly. Be relevant. Get closer to your audience. Say what they need to hear, not what everyone else is saying. Be human. Challenger brands win by being real, by being honest, and by being personal. And finally, be strategic. Everything you do should serve a bigger purpose. You really can't waste the moves that you have here. So no wasted moves. As I share all this, I think the one thing that we see, and this goes back to the point I made about the marketing leader myth. Oftentimes when a challenger brand tries to act like the market leader and follows that playbook, they become invisible or actually reinforce everything the market leader is doing. We don't want you to do that. So we're going to go ahead and open this up to questions. Before we get into that, though, there is going to be a recording of this webinar today available tomorrow. Everyone that signed up will be sending that to you. We're going to go into a deeper dive into challenger brands in our next webinar, this being the building a challenger brand strategy from concept to execution, give you more examples, a little bit more thought with that. But obviously, if you want to discuss that more, we're here for that discussion now. So while we're answering questions, we want to hit you with one final poll, though, as well. Want to know what you thought. Hopefully this was informative and got the creative juices going as well. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Wayne, who has been looking at questions, and we're going to go from there.
Yeah, so the first question that we had come through was this, and Chris, I think maybe you're a good one to talk about this, or even Tony, if you want to chime in, please. Warby is in the process of building brick and mortar locations. I have seen several plan sets come through recently in New York metro area. Will they lose their challenger mindset as they achieve the leadership level?
That's an interesting, yeah, I saw that pop up. That is a very interesting thing. Why would they be moving to brick and mortar? And if you said it was in New York metro areas, they might just be capitalizing on a convenience of a large population, which could obviously be a good strategic move. Uh, but are they going to? I guess what will really tell is are they going to back away from all their other tactics to connect with their audiences better on digitally and online? Are they going to draw back on supporting those audiences?
Mhm.
That's very important.
Just to echo what Tony said there, I think it's that right there. It's they've established this challenger brand mindset. They've got all these different ways to connect with them that they stand out. It's disruptive. It gets people excited. Yes, having locations that you can walk into, that's convenience, that helps. But this is an interesting time for them because they got to make sure that they don't seem like everybody else.
Yeah.
And that becomes the challenge there. So,
And they probably can do it too now because they've built up enough reputation of being that challenger brand and having the word of mouth support them.
Yeah.
That now they can actually open up a store that's going to get traffic.
Russ, good question. Thank you.
And I think the next question that we have here actually kind of ties into that a little bit. Chris, or I'm sorry, Tony, I think this one probably best suits for you, but can you be a market leader and a challenger brand at the same time? Can you use a hybrid approach of these tactics?
I would say you're either one or the other. You're either a market leader or a challenger, but a market leader that has a challenger mindset is going to continue to grow. And that will help them overcome those pitfalls that we mentioned about being stale or not agile or not taking chances or not innovating. If you have that challenger brand mindset and you are a market leader, then you're going to continue to grow and get a better footing. That said, also, you can be a market leader in a subcategory, such as like the Tesla could be a leader in electric vehicles, but not the number one vehicle overall. So, and they're doing that by, and if they want to maintain that position, they've got to keep innovating. They got to keep doing the things and making the connections with audiences, which obviously is a struggle. But yeah, I think you can be both, but you can truly only be, you're either a market leader or a challenger. It's how you act and how you approach marketing.
Okay, thank you. The next one that we've come up here, Chris, I think is probably best for you. Obviously, any Tony or yourself, or even myself could answer. But how do you know if you've been successful as a challenger brand? We'll never unseat the market leader, but how will we know we succeeded as being a challenger brand and implementing this strategy? Chris, what do you think?
I'm going to say it comes back to your key marketing metrics, what you're looking at. Obviously, sales comes back with this. Are you successful? Are you getting the margin that you're looking for? Are you building the customer relationships that are going to power you moving forward? Are you noticed as a disruptor in the category that is grabbing not only market share by growing, but ultimately taking a lot of the conversation and really making it about themselves? Love that. I think it works really well there. It's interesting, and it's a good question, Wayne, because there are certain industries, certain markets where you're probably never going to unseat the market leader. They're always going to be up here, and that's okay. It's just defining what your playground is, what your field is, and what you're going to really be known for, and winning there. Oftentimes, the market leader is successful because they have a one-size-fits-all approach. And if you can fit into those columns or those product offerings, all right, great, they're going to get the sale. But the challenge brand, it's an opportunity to talk differently, walk differently, have a different message. And ultimately, that in itself should be successful. So I hope Wayne, I'll throw it back at you. How would you have answered that question?
Yeah, no, I think you definitely encompass that in terms of how you can know if you've been successful as a challenger brand. I think it's about setting your own goals and understanding how you've comparatively succeeded in doing that. So I think you did a really great job at being able to capture that. We had another one come in here, which I think is definitely on topic here. If you're a challenger brand, where the market leader is somebody like a Kleenex, that's just
that's actually called facial tissue.
Oh, right.
Kleenex is a brand, but go ahead. Yeah, that's the point of the entire discussion.
But essentially your market leader is Kleenex. What tips do you have for overcoming that? I think that really ties into the conversation we've had today.
Yeah, this one's super relevant. I mean, we're always facing the market leader that is the name of them has become the category. And I think the best way for a challenger brand to approach that is just head on and acknowledge it. If you're not number one and you have a brand that is so well known like a Kleenex, just say, yeah, we're not them. What are you? You're something better. You're different. And then you can share your value propositions and why your product is different. You can make a better connection. You can leverage the fact that you don't have to follow the herd and go with everybody else. You don't have to use the Kleenex. Be a Puffs Plus person,
Right.
And then you can have a loyal following there. But just embrace that you're not number one. Don't try to be them. Just embrace it. Call it out.
I think oftentimes the strategy that we've seen with that question about, if the brand leader is the Kleenex, so to speak, it really comes back to that point of differentiating and saying, well, are you like everyone else? Because if you are, go with Kleenex. But I'm guessing you're not, which is why we have a better product for you, or better story all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So, good question.
The last question that we have here is, we talked a little bit about how a challenger brand embraces digital first. And what exactly does that mean? And what kind of things can you leverage to be a digital first challenger brand? I'm actually going to take a stab at this real quick and see if I can help with that. But, when we talk digital first, it's about leveraging disruptive technologies. I mentioned AI, but, in the history of marketing, there's been numerous changes in the market. Think about social media and how brands use that to capitalize. Market leaders were slow to respond on a lot of the social media trends. And then challenger brands were able to use those channels to directly talk to their audience. So that was like an example of that. I think as a challenger brand, you also have to think about those emerging platforms. Everybody's using Facebook. Everybody's using LinkedIn. Is that where your audience is? Is that where you can make the best connection with them? Think about emerging platforms. Take a look at Reddit. Have you tried TikTok? Substack could be even something that we look into. You need to leverage short form video right now. It's hot. It's how people, unfortunately, I think they have a short attention span, but getting your message across in a very finite piece of time is really important. So look at shorts, look at reels, look at short form video. And then if you're not looking at connected TV, this is typically a market leader type of approach, but connected TV now takes it away from a mass broadcast type of approach and gets really individual, and you get very precise in your targeting to actually seize your ad through video.
Comment just came in that I think builds on what you're just asking there. Challenger brands often operate on different budgets than market leaders. Where do you recommend starting the investments or investing the largest amount to make a unique mark? Digital spaces, there's SEO, websites, different targeting platforms that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
There might be something you can add there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's about just being smart with your budget. And I think that's where challenger brands really excel. They're not just looking to spend a whole bunch of money. What's the biggest bang for the money I'm going to spend? When we look at some of these challenger brands target, we look at, upcoming things. Don't just think demographics. Who's my, what is the age? What is their gender? Think beyond that. Look at things like geoframing. If you haven't heard of this technology, I always use the Metallica example, but imagine that you had the ability to target, and you do, by the way, through programmatic advertising, to target all the past Metallica concerts in the past 3 years. And you can retarget them and talk to them after the fact. Imagine it's the Builder Show and you're targeting attendees from the Builder Show over the past 3 years. That can be very powerful. They've already pre-selected that they are very into your message and wanting to learn more. So tapping into those technologies to leverage that, I think is really great. And then the last thing I'd put here too is be smart about how you use your first party data. Don't rely on the Facebooks, the LinkedIns to be able to build your audience for you. Make sure you're reaching out, engaging with them. Use things like email, even text messaging or direct messaging. Make sure that you're building your audience and talking directly to them. I think Seth Godin has a book called Tribes. It's very much that mindset. How do you build that engagement with your first party audience?
Yeah. Jared, just also responding to your question here as well. With the examples that Wayne just provided, those were getting very much into the different channels and really how to connect, and really, quite honestly, some really great technology that can really make you relevant in different places. I think though, for us, if you're in a digital first area, your website, that is the connection point. That should be the hub where everything is around it. You layer SEO or social or any type of paid campaigns around it. But if you're thinking of it like a bullseye, your website's in the middle. That's where that customer centric approach really needs to be shown. And that's where every campaign really originates and goes from there. You might have, again, different bands around the bullseye in the middle in terms of here's our paid program, and here's the SEO, organic, or what's the new term right now? SAI?
AIO,
AIO, excuse me.
GEO, yeah, for answer engine optimization or, those type of, yep.
And that's a whole separate webinar in itself, but that's, I guess that's where my mind would go immediately.
Great. Well, I think that was the questions that we had here. If anybody has anything last minute, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. If you think of something afterwards, after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to, Chris, Tony, myself, or even just the greater team at large. We're happy to talk about this. We could talk about this day in and day out. We really embrace the challenger brand mindset and do some of our best work, I think. So Chris, I'll pass it over to you to just close things out.
Now, again, we appreciate your time very much. I know we're getting into the lunch hour here on the East Coast, so hopefully you can grab something to eat. But again, we appreciate your time. As Wayne just said, we love the Challenger brand. This is very much who we are. Again, it's really built into our DNA. If you want to start to explore beyond this in terms of where you can go with this, or you've got your own ideas or some, again, knowing how important the customer is, you've got some specific thoughts, we'd love to hear them. And as I say that, it all comes back for us to, how can we help excite and get you to the point where you're taking on the market leader. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.